Hey guys, I finally got some good news for once. It's Friday today, and this past Monday was the first day it was warm enough to even start opening the colonies a little bit after that week freeze. So I had like 4 hours where I could open the hives. So I just went through a few hives just to spot check. My assumption was that they were going to drop a frame or two, and I had given up on the idea of that second semi load, and I was honestly expecting almost to tip up a few colonies here and there. First yard I went to though, I started opening it. And the first pallet in that particular yard I'm thinking of is like, it's the worst. It's a 30 pallet yard. It's the worst pallet in the entire yard. None of the 4 hives on the pallet were going to go to California. And I cracked the first one open, and it was like, I swear it was like an 8 frame population. And I was looking for my thumbtack. Maybe it had like fallen off the ground, because that's how I'm marking the colonies. And I was like, maybe I broke the thumbtack off. I couldn't find it. So I gave it a tack, obviously. I went to the next one, and it was like a 6 or a 7. And, it had not even been marked as a 6 or a 7. And I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. And then I think there was one other one also that had jumped up to like a 6 or a 7. And then I just kept plowing through the yard, and I started to notice immediately that the hives had just exploded in population growth. I was seeing 1, 2, 3 frame population increases, and it was cold now. I started opening the colonies the second it hit 50 degrees. The sun was shining, there was a little breeze, so the bees were really clustered, and I'm just seeing these 1, 2, 3 population increases. And I was like, well, maybe there was just a lot of brood while it was warm, and they had laid a lot of brood. That brood hatched. Probably that freeze is going to shrink the brood nest like I was expecting, and then the hives will crash shortly after. So I thought it was kind of just a trick, and so I started pulling brood, and I saw minimum 2 really nice frames of brood. I mean, not like wall to wall, but like that really nice solid arch, solid center pattern there, honey arch, pollen arch, really just beautiful. I mean, almost like spring brood, solid patterns, no disease or anything. And I was like, oh, that's really nice. So I was seeing at least 2, and then I hit some of the bigger colonies. I was seeing 2.5. Then I started seeing several hives that had 3 full frames of brood. And then I started finding some that had drone pupa on the top bars. And I was like, what is going on? And to be fair, that was one of my best bee yards. So I only have so many hives there. So I thought, okay, well, this yard's kind of a freak of nature. This is my one-off. So I just ran around to like about a half a dozen other yards that day and just cracked them open. And I'd say 5 out of the 6 yards I visited had increased on average 2 frames. Everything I had marked as a 6 frame population. And remember, I just went through all of the hives in the last 2 weeks of December. I checked everything that was not going to California, and then I spot checked some of the average strong ones when I was giving them that thin feed. And so it had not been that long. It had been some of these had been 2, 3, not even quite 4 weeks for a lot of these. I was not expecting to see that kind of increase. And the only yard that didn't really grow is because that yard got really hit with mites late in the season, and they're healthy now, but they just didn't really rebound. Everything else has increased. All of the 6s in December are now clearly 8s. I had some that were not even marked as a 6 that are now 8s. Like, I'm assuming they were a 5 and they jumped to an 8. The 8s are now 9s, 10s, and I mean, just looking fantastic. So that was Monday, and I only had a few hours. So I started grading properly on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, or maybe I think it rained one day. I graded 2 days anyways. And just in those 2 days of grading, I've already added like another 50, 60 colonies to California that otherwise would have not had any chance of going. And the ones that I had already marked are just really popping up to where they're above an 8 frame at this point. So that really shocked me. I did not expect this. I remember one January a few years ago that they did jump a couple frames. Nobody believes me. I tell so many people, and they're like, oh, you're crazy. You were just kind of new to beekeeping. You didn't know. But I was like, I know, because I used to write the number on the side of the box, how many frames of bees there were. And I would slash out that number and write the next number next to it for each round of grading. So I could see every month the exact population increase. But I have not seen that in like 3 years or something. So I don't know, was it that thin feed that is what it caused it? Is it something to do? Because it certainly hadn't been warm. I mean, right, we just had a hard freeze. So I don't think it's the weather. There is a lot of pollen coming in, but there's always pollen coming in this time of year. Even the yards that were not on mustard look as good as the ones that were on mustard. I don't know what was going on with it. So I'm going to attribute it to the thin feed. Could be the fact we did keep most of our mites down this year. I requeened everything. And yeah, maybe buying the extra syrup too, because they haven't drank a lot of the syrup, that they've had now for several weeks. Most of them have drank about a gallon. There's one here and there that took the whole bucket, the whole 2 gallons. But I don't know. I've been really shocked. So remember, I only needed 2, maybe 300 colonies to improve to that second semi, and I've already added a chunk of that. And I still have a lot of good yards to go back and regrade. And because the 8-framers now are jumping into the double-digit range, that's just going to increase my average. So even if I have to have some 6 frames on that truck, they can all average out to my 8 frame. So I don't know, but I was pretty excited. And of course, as soon as I get out there and start grading the very first hive after not being in the hives for a week, broker immediately texts me and he's like, "How soon can you get me that load of bees?" And I was like, I didn't respond, right away, because I wanted to see what the colonies were like. I expected a lot of them just to crash on me, and I was going to get worried. When I saw they had increased, I said, well, give me 2 more weeks. So that would be the end of January, which I still think is plenty reasonable, time to send them. I would love to send them in February at this point, but asked for 2 more weeks. And I said, hey, would you be willing to take a second load? Because I hadn't checked that many colonies by the time I texted them. So I said, hey, would you take a second semi-load of 6, 7, 8 frame colonies, 2 frames of brood, at minimum? And, and I have not, it's been a few days. I haven't heard a reply from him. So I don't know what's going on with the second semi. I don't technically have it on paper. I just have a feeling from what I've seen in the growth and the expansion and all this additional brood. And I still have syrup. So I'm still going around topping the buckets off as I'm checking these hives, that, they're going to increase. We do have another week of cold weather about to hit us here in a few days. And from what I'm seeing on the news, it's supposed to be really, really bad. I've heard some people saying it's going to snow here. I highly doubt that. It has happened years ago. When I was a little kid, it snowed here. But I don't know if that's going to happen. But I'm about to get locked out of the hives for a whole nother week. And but they survived the last freeze just fine. And they came out looking better from it. I don't know how. And nobody died. Almost everything is increased. Worst case scenario, my previous grade has held true. So if I can squeeze out a few more weeks, the hives being here in Florida with that thin feed, I don't know. I'm feeling a lot more optimistic about putting together that second semi. I just need for the broker to message me back and tell me if he's even willing to take it, because I'm not in communications with any other brokers. So I'm kind of wondering if I need to reach out and maybe try to find a second broker and just ask him, because what worries me, and my broker's a nice guy, he's very picky with his grading, like I've been saying, but he's got a good reputation in the community. And that's why I've just wanted to stay with him, because to me, reputation matters almost more than anything else. Even if he, is a little strict on the hives, I know I get paid. I know my hives come back safe, and there's no funny business. And because a lot of brokers will cheat you, for sure. And so I don't really have another broker, but I'm kind of wondering if I should start reaching out to any other ones and seeing if they'll be willing to potentially take a load. Could be a slightly smaller than 8 frame. I don't know. If they're here a little longer and the weather is cooperating, they're growing like they're growing now, I very well may just have 2 solid 8 frame hives, 8 frame population semis. So I'm not really sure. I don't really want to make that commitment to anybody specifically yet, because I need to see more locations. I've only been grading for a couple of days, but that's what I'm doing now. I'm just plowing through all the hives. I'm checking some of the strong ones that are already going to California just to make sure they aren't going down, but they only seem to be going up. So I'm mostly focusing on the colonies that have not made grade and topping buckets off and just hitting as many yards as I can, because I think we're going to get rained out this weekend. And then next week, it's just like really, really cold, freezing weather. So I won't be able to get through everything for a full official 3rd grade in the next week, but I'm just going to do what I can. And if I keep seeing this increase, I'm feeling really good about it. I'm just going to have to keep going and wait until I have the hard numbers to make sure it can happen. But we're definitely beyond 1 semi easy. And that 1 semi is way above an 8 frame average load at this point. I don't get paid more if it's above an 8 frame, which kind of sucks, but they will come back strong for splits. They will survive the trip, be more likely to survive the trip. Of course, the broker is going to be happier. The farmer is going to be happier. They're getting more bang for their buck. And, I want to send good bees too. I want a good reputation. So I don't know. There's a lot to do. I'm going to try and rush and get everything done. And anyways, pretty good news. I was expecting, honestly, a catastrophe for this week, and the bees have 100% proved me wrong, and I'm happy to be proved wrong in this way. They have just really shot through the roof, and I never would have guessed. But I'm going to go check some more hives and make sure that holds true. Watch the first yard I come out here to film. It's going to be dead or something. They always do the opposite of what I think, but Hopefully they'll be good. I have no idea, but I'm going to try to do at least maybe 4 or 5 yards today if I can, and just see how they're looking. All right. Thanks, guys. Here's one of the summer nuke yards. We moved in about 96 hives back when they were little in 5-frame nuke boxes, but so we've had a lot of them died off. But last I remember, they were looking pretty good. I haven't been expecting very much out of these summer split yards, but I saw one the other day that had jumped up quite a bit, so I'm hoping this one would too. It's a brand new yard we just got just this summer, so I've got like no data on it. I see a lot of pollen coming in, but I'll have to get in there and see how the hives are doing. Yeah, see, first hive of the yard. It's a solid 6 from the bottom. The only reason they haven't expanded is because they got 4 frames of foundation, although they've started to draw a little bit of one of the 4 frames. And then look up here in the top. Definitely, I would call that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 5 solid frames of medium. So that's about 2.5 frames if I count them as a deep. Remember, 2 mediums equal 1 deep. So I got a 6, probably a 7, 8, maybe even a 9. Like, even with that foundation, that's plenty good to go. And I had this one marked as a 6 framer, and I was just here, I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago. So already looking really good. And they are packed full of honey too in the front. I mean, in the top box there. So that's just what I've been seeing. I've just been seeing, I mean, that one's probably a solid 3-frame increase. So first pallet there, all jumped from 6s to 8 or more. Then I got this double deep here, and usually I can tell if they're going to be really good because if they've taken all 2 gallons of syrup, generally they've really increased. This double deep here took maybe a half a bucket, so I didn't expect much. And I didn't expect much for the double deeps to expand. I did have it marked as a 6 when I was last here. I just cracked this girl open, and it's covered in drone pupa. Definitely got a good 5, 6 on the bottom. Definitely 7, 8, 9. I mean, maybe honestly 10. Excuse me, girls. I want to see that. But yeah, I got a nice little thing of drone pupa, and I'm just seeing that now. Several yards. I mean, this was not here. That fresh wax right there hanging from the bottom bars. Really just seen a massive increase. That's really crazy. So already we're off to a good start. And now these were like, I don't remember, June, July, August, little tiny 5-frame nukes that were not in good shape. Probably over super. Definitely have too much foundation. There's some there. But honestly, this one can go. It's definitely big enough, and I'm going to top off their bucket, so they're going to keep growing. And I'm just seeing this in every yard. Everything's jumping up, multiple frames. And with the drone pupa, they're pulling their syrup down. It's really crazy to me. I've just never seen this before. But I'm really happy to do it. I'm going to try to plow through this yard and see how much we get an increase on. Everything that was a 6 last time I was here is clearly an 8+. I have some that were 5 or less that are now 6, 7s. Almost that whole row is going to make it. Almost everything is pulled down, whole 2 gallons of their buckets. There's a couple here and there. I think I missed some of the thick syrup. I didn't dump all of it out. So they haven't taken as much, but I'm going to fix that today. But they have really, really increased. And then I had this pallet here that looks pretty bad. I can always tell what the bad ones are because I was rotating and putting the deep on top because they just weren't in that medium. And this one had taken its full 2 gallons, and I popped it open. I mean, look at that. This hive was junk. I only rotate them if they're kind of on death's doorstep. And they're not like California grade. You can see they're still stunted by all that foundation in the back, but they're a solid 6 frames. But they have drawn all that wax in whatever, 2 or 3 weeks. Whenever I was last here, they took down 6 gallons, and they were in really, really bad shape last time I was here. So I'm seeing a lot of wax production, the drone pupa production. Again, multiple frame increases, and I just didn't even expect this yard to go to California at all, and now I don't know. We'll see. I probably maybe 90+% of this yard's going to make it. And a few more weeks, if they continue this growth, you know, we're going to have an 8+ frame average out of this little summer nuke yard, which I would not have guessed would have worked. So I don't know what's going on, but I'm seeing this in every location except for that one yard that was sick with mites. I don't know. Then feed maybe. I'm glad to see it. I just kind of wish I knew exactly what was going on, but I'm certainly happy to see the hive increase. So here's another one. This one that's an old orange pin. So this was probably a 6-7 frame population. Look at the poor things. They got 5 frames of foundation in there. It looks like old foundation too. Full of drone pupa. Definitely solid 5 on the bottom. I gave them a medium box of comb, and they are just about a full medium box. I mean, they're not on that one frame, and I can see that comb there is pretty bad. But wow, that's really good. Like, I mean, even with that foundation, that one's technically strong enough. Um, if we got what, 8 frames, that's 4. Let's just call it 4 plus a 5. I mean, technically that's a 9-frame colony. I would love to see them across both that box, but they're heavy. They're full up here. They're only not moving because of the foundation. I think if I had had more comb for this location, we would easily be in the double-digit territory. This is a really good bee yard. I'm glad I put these hives here. You never know until you put them here, but they have just done extremely well. These things were just really tiny little 5-frame hives. I mean, they were pretty weak when I brought them in. They may have been 4-frame population when I moved them in. It took me forever to transfer them. Then they got over supered, and they still have toughed it out and done so good. I'm crazy to see drone pupa in mid-January like this. This hive here was an 8-frame last time I was here, so it was already going. But they are a slam full box of bees. This was a good one, and the good ones are just turning into great ones. It's kind of hard to see with the sun, but I'd say at least 8 of those frames up there are slam full of bees too. I mean, wow, they are just really blowing up. Here's another one of those hive and a halves that I rotated. If I put that medium on bottom, it had to be less than 5 frames. I mean, it had to be in bad shape, and it is good, slam full of bees, nice lid. You know, I can probably re-rotate this one. I think I'm going to put the medium, the deep on the bottom, take the medium, put it back up here, give them another bucket. That's crazy. Yeah, this yard has really jumped up. There's about 53 colonies here, and again, late summer they were just little 4 or 5 frame suckers. Now I think there's 36 that 100% can go to California. 18 of the colonies are 8+ framers, and then another 18 are 6-7 framers. The other ones that are not marked are pretty darn close. They're really good looking 5, almost quite 6s. And I'm trying to grade really conservative now since I see the hard freeze coming. So some of those 6s I marked technically had 8 frames of bees, but they were just barely there. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to write in my notes and say most of the 6s are probably 7s or almost 8s. Almost all the buckets that were completely empty. That's the first yard I've come to recently where the buckets have been this empty. I'm starting to get on my last little bit of feed, so I'm trying to be smart about where I invest it. But this yard clearly is expanding so much, and I wasn't really anticipating this yard to go to California. So I think it's well worth to invest the syrup here. I believe I'm going to get a return on my investment, but that's more colonies that I wasn't even anticipating to go. And honestly, within a few more weeks or so, I think most of these are going to be 8s. And then I'll squeeze a few more 6s in. So that's been really great. I'm really surprised how much they've grown. So that's what I'm hoping to see. And every yard's been like that. I'm upgrading the 6s to 8s, and I'm adding more 6s. It's just been pretty consistent. And if they hold through this freeze, I'm really hoping that all the yards are going to be like this. And so far, they all except for about one of them, they have been. So I'm going to keep plowing through the yards. This one took a little while because there were so many that were ungraded. I had to basically grade the whole yard. Most of the other yards, I'm just checking the ones that were not graded or were graded low. And most of the other yards have buckets. And anything that has at least a gallon of feed, I'm just bypassing, and I'm not refilling their buckets unless I just feel like they're really needing it for some reason, just so I can stretch my feed a little further and make sure everyone's got at least a gallon. But then I hit a yard like this where I'm like, you know what, let me just give them 2 gallons because they're clearly using it. They're drinking that thin stuff really quickly. So glad to see that. I hope the rest of the yards today look just as good. This yard was really good last time I was here. This is definitely one of the best of the new yards we got. I don't expect I'm going to have to do much here, I hope. Most of them are already 8-frame colonies. I'm going to check the 6-7 frames, see if they went up. I'll spot check a few of the 8s, see if they stayed the same. And I think there was one hive here, only one, that wasn't going to California last time. It was just foundation stunted. I gave it comb, so I'm expecting 100% of this yard to go. I'm going to take a look at some of these triples because most of those are just boxes of foundation. If they're not doing anything with it, I may just yank those off while I'm here too. It'll make it easier when we have to come back and grab all the colonies if they're doing something with it. I don't know. Maybe I'll leave them. I could definitely, if it is comb, I could take it and spread it around to some other yards that have just way too much foundation. But Hopefully this yard will go pretty quick. Yeah, these 8-frame colonies are still looking really good. They're still basically 2 slam full boxes of bees, and since these are double deeps, they are really, really strong. They're heavy. They seem like they still have their syrup left, which is kind of nice. I don't have to fill so much. And I mean, they're so heavy, I don't even know how much more they can take, but it looks like they're holding their grade, which is fantastic. So this one is a 6 from the bottom. They've got a frame or 2 up top, but it's still mostly empty comb. It's pretty light. They completely took their 2 gallons. But, you know, I'm still going to kind of leave this one as a 6. I mean, technically it's a little better, but because this pop box is basically empty, it's just not doing a whole lot. You know what I'm noticing so far is some of the buckets actually they have drawn is this yard is not growing quite as much as that other yard. And the other yard's only a few miles down the road. And this yard last time was a monster. And they still look good. They're not shrinking, but they haven't grown much. They kind of look what I remember them looking like when I was here a few weeks ago, even though they've taken their syrup. So it's so strange, you know, you can go to an area that, as far as I can tell, is basically in the same area, same flowers blooming, same everything, got work at the same time, same food. And then that first yard just exploded, and this one's, it's holding tight, but I really thought these suckers were going to be 20 framers when I got here, and they're kind of exactly what I graded them in December. Yeah, none of these triple deeps with these deep boxes of foundation have done a thing at all. It's just, I remember there was 1 or 2 last time I was here that had something, but so far I've been pulling every single one of these just right off, break them down to a double deep. That way if we've got to come and grab them, I don't have to deal with this. We had a triple deep I forgot to break down last night in a yard we moved, and it was already like 96, 97 colonies, so the truck was technically kind of almost overloaded, plus all the pallets. And we just had that one hive that was just way too, like, sky high. And man, I didn't think we were going to make it back to the staging yard with them, so I was like, you know, I got to watch that. So we're going to break all these down to double deep so they'll stack really nice and tightly on the truck. This was a 6-7 hive last time, and it's a solid 6 on the bottom. And it's got a couple little frames of bees up here, not really a full box. So have they grown a hair, but they still have a lot of extra room. They did take their entire 2 gallons of syrup too, and not really seeing any significant increase here. That's weird. Well, when I see this, that kind of gives me pause. I don't want to get too excited, too ahead of myself, thinking that every yard is growing, because this was one of the best yards. And although I'm sure 100% of this yard is going to go to California, they haven't grown any. And a lot of these smaller, weaker colonies and the weaker bee yards have really skyrocketed. And I wonder if it's just because they weak and they have just more space to expand. I'm not really sure. Maybe these girls are kind of content with their size. Maybe there's not enough pollen coming in. I don't know. I didn't really do anything different here than the other yards that are increasing. And I have to keep going, but yeah, they just seem like they're exactly how they were a few weeks ago. All right, this yard is done. There's 35 colonies here that are A+ framers. There's 5 that are in the 6-7 frame range, but it's exactly, the whole yard was kind of what I was showing. They just stayed almost identical to how they were graded, which is fine. They didn't go down. The yard's really good. And that one colony somewhere over there, that's basically a 5 framer. The one colony that can't go is still, it's a beautiful 5. Has not really changed much at all. Topped a lot of the buckets off to try and just juice them up, but then I noticed that I'm getting a little low on syrup. I got maybe 7,500 gallons left on the truck, and I've probably got maybe 500 gallons left at the house, and that's it. And that's probably if I kind of consolidate all my little totes that have got, you know, 10 gallons here, 20 gallons there in the bottom of them. I put them all together and added some extra water. Yeah, I might be able to squeeze another 500 gallons after this. So I'm burning through it a little faster than I would like, but it does seem it's taking most of these colonies, probably now with it being colder, closer to 3 weeks, I would say, for them to take those buckets. So, and I've been feeding for a little while, so I think I'm going to be okay. It looks like they should have food. At least all the hives should probably have something to eat through the rest of this month, which should be okay. And they may ship by then. I don't know. I certainly would rather get it out on the hives than it sit there at the house and, you know, ferment or become toxic or something by the time I start feeding again next summer. But I don't know, no significant change. But again, you know, you can't beat it if there's only one hive that's not going. That's not a bad thing. And all right, I'm going to try to get out of here. It's taking me a little longer than I thought. Hopefully I got enough time and syrup to finish the other yards. I have 5 of these triples left, or some weird double deep medium thing and hive and a half medium thing, but they're full of comb and honey and bees. I don't have, nowhere near do I have time to pull them off, shake the bees off, redistribute it. So if I have to move this yard before I can come back and get these things down, and honestly, I probably won't have time. That's going to be a real pain in the butt to have to deal with that, but if I pull it off, I just don't have time to do it. And if I take it off and I forget it and I throw it at the house somewhere, that's going to get ruined. It's good comb and good honey. I would love to just pop that off, give it to some of these little singles, and turn them into a nice double deep. But it is what it is, and maybe it's something I can do last minute before we throw them on the semi. I don't know, but it'll be protected in there anyways. But the rest of them all got broken down. And the 2 stories, they'll probably hold their temperature better too with this super hard freeze coming up. It is what it is. Off to the next yard. This yard was really good last time I was here, about 3 weeks ago. I remember I had to dump a lot of the buckets out. They were so thick, but they were all increasing. Hopefully they will too. Unfortunately, I forgot that like half the yard are triples. I don't know why I do this to myself. You know, when you work for another beekeeper and you got a bunch of coworkers, you can blame it on the other beekeeper. Like, oh yeah, it was so and so. But when you're the only beekeeper, you know, you gotta swallow it. I did this to myself. I gotta break all these suckers down. I can't remember if they're foundation or comb. Probably some of both. And see how they're looking. Hopefully pretty good. This hive here was not marked, so it was probably a 5 or less. It was a solid 6 on the bottom. I just flipped it up. And then I got, I don't know, a couple of frames up here. So I can probably give it a 6 marking, but it hasn't really changed that much. And even that first pallet, there was one 6 I kind of upgraded to an 8, but it was like barely an 8, kind of. I mean, could have gone either way. So far, this one doesn't look like it's changed that much either, but I'm just getting into it. I was really hoping to see a little bit more growth. This was at least an 8 framer last time I was here. And I mean, they're still looking good. I mean, that's a solid deep box, pretty solid medium box. They're not shrinking, but it's a lot like the other yard I was just at. There, the grade's just kind of holding steady. I mean, maybe these grow. I don't know. I don't really measure them if they go, once they hit 8, I have no idea if they get bigger. But I'm not seeing a lot of drone pupa anywhere. I'm not seeing wax production. I'm just seeing, 2 nice boxes of bees, which is fine. This will go to California to make money. But usually the bigger hives will kind of show the most obvious growth a lot of the times because they just have more workers if there's something out blooming. And they're bringing in some pollen for sure. So that's not really the issue. I'm just a little sad I'm not seeing these increase like that first yard. First hive I've lost in a while. This is why I like to put those drain holes in the pallets, because it holds up a lot of water. And this one doesn't look like it had one. You see, a lot of these were built where they have drains on this side, and of course it can drain out the entrance. But these 2 back corners, and because the pallet was kind of tilted that direction, the water pulled up. And the hive wasn't even marked as a 6, so it was probably very weak. But, that water certainly didn't do them any favors. That's why I'm out trying to do all the extra work and drill those drain holes. And all this rain we've been having lately, I've seen a lot of hives. Thankfully, they weren't dead, but have been holding water like this. And usually I just pry this bar back up here, and I try to tilt it and let it drain out. But no point here. This hive's, these poor girls are toast. They're going to go back to the house with me. All right, here's the first one I've seen that's grown, and not by much. It was not even a 6, so it was 5 or less. It's about a 5-6 on the bottom now. There's like a couple little frames, so I'd call it a 6 or 7. It's got a good weight. I can see a little bit of fresh wax honey production there on the top bars, but nothing significant. And I mean, nothing else has changed along this entire line here. It's a bit. They do look a little better than the last yard as far as growth. Like, I think there seems to be a little bit going on, but certainly nothing significant. No major increases anywhere. This one was marked as an 8+, and it's a solid 5 on the bottom. And there's definitely drone pupa on the top bars, but they look like they've decreased in population. I mean, I can maybe add another frame or so from the medium, but that gives me more like a 6. That whole section there is not even used. Usually when I see the drone pupa on the top bars like that, The hives are very, very, very strong because they're kind of in reproduction mode at that point. But they've definitely lost some population. Unless I misgraded or something, that's strange. Not too happy about that. I want to keep going. I'm going to make the assumption that these are old cells, and they're nothing that happened recently. There's another one too, and that one almost looks, it doesn't look that old. I don't know, this hive is very weak. It wasn't even marked as a 6, so it was in bad shape. I'm guessing those are old swarm cells, but those were definitely swarm cells. I don't know, I usually cut those things off when I grade, just in case I see any, so I don't, second guess myself like I am now. But, that's weird. Well, I thought those on the bottom were swarm cells, but there's this one here that is clearly a supersedure cell. There's eggs and larvae in here. There's a queen that's laying. That one looked like it hatched. This one definitely looks, pretty fresh. There's no rolled jelly or anything, and they're not making it. It's they look pretty fresh. That's weird. A lot of drones here. I wonder if it was a drone layer or something. Maybe they replaced her. I don't know. That's really weird to see that this time of year. Some of the other yards I was doing the other day were so strong. I kind of was joking and thinking to myself, they might swarm on me in January, but I mean, this yard's not going to. They're not doing much. This hive is pretty bad. Maybe that's why they changed the queen. Kind of strange to see it this time of year, but there are drones all over the place and drone pupas, so I guess they could mate. Some of these triples are full. Not a lot of them, but I mean, they're just really honey and bees. They put a lot of the honey up top. Not seeing any brood yet. Like this one's just slammed 10 frames of honey. This one's okay. It's a really good hive. And I've definitely had to leave a few of them that way, but I've broken some of them down. I do wonder, because the ones I pulled the foundation off of that were triples, they seem to have shrank a bit, or, they just don't look as lively as some of these consolidated ones. So I wonder if having just an empty box of foundation on some of these colonies is pulling, which are the brood nests is in the bottom, one of the 2 boxes there. I wonder if it's pulling the heat off as the heat rises and goes into that empty, basically it's just an empty space like an attic. And it must be constantly just yanking the heat off those things. I'm not too worried about it with here because the bees are here. They're protecting it. It's insulated with the honey. They seem like they're happy and healthy. All 3 boxes here are pretty well slammed full of honey or bees or, some kind of resource. But oh, there's a big old drone going around. I've seen a bunch here in this yard. It's crazy to see them this time of year. And I don't know. I do wonder maybe if that's having a little bit of an impact. Maybe because, I don't know, it's just strange that this yard was growing. It looked so good last time, but it had all those empty triple foundations. And the same with the last yard. A lot of empty triple foundations, which there are hives here too that are just pure doubles and haven't done anything. So that may not be the reason. I just kind of wondering. I'm sure having an empty box on a hive during these hard freezes is certainly not doing them any good. So I'm glad I'm breaking them down, but I'm still going to have to deal with some of these triples when we move them, unless I can have time to come here and pop them off. I kind of regret doing that now in hindsight. My plan was to come back and split those off. I left a bunch of lids here, and I thought I'd come back with some mated queens, make more splits to rebuild all these dead out spots on the pallet. I just never made time to do it, and now I'm kind of stuck with them. But I've got hives that need them. I just got to have the time to get out there and do it. There is a little bit of pollen coming into this yard, but I had to look. Like, this is maybe the 10th colony. I had to stand in front of the entrance trying to see if there's anything coming in. And the pollen that I'm seeing coming in is very little tiny flakes of yellow looking pollen. And it's just not very much. A lot of these bees are coming back empty handed, looks like. And the yards I saw that had increased over the last couple of days that were doing so well, they were hauling in pollen like insane. There was one yard, the bees on it had these massive yellow pollen granules. They were so big. I'm not kidding. They were almost the size of the head of the bee. I don't know how they were carrying it. She was like an 18-wheeler truck driver bee, man, just going down the road, these huge loads of pollen, and they were all over the hive. So I'm going to assume, and it makes sense, obviously, that the lack of growth is probably a lack of protein. So there's probably a pollen deficiency here. There's something. The 2 hives I checked, I did see, I'm going to say it's 3 frames of brood. It's kind of scraggly. from what I saw, but it's not like 3 really nice frames. It was just sort of, honestly, maybe like 2 average frames just spread over three frames. So I don't know. Didn't see any disease or anything. I'm not really spending too much time digging in the hives right now, just so I can try and get through everything. But yeah, I'm going to assume it's the pollen deficiency, but there is pollen coming in, just not a lot. You can see most of these bees are just, they're empty-handed. And I don't know, maybe something will turn around here. There's a lot of fields here. That's why I was hoping to see something a little more. In the last yard is sitting right on top of an old, I think it was a peanut or a cotton field. I can't remember now, this summer. And there were some mustard blooming. Should have been within probably a mile from the yard. The bees should have been able to reach it, but didn't see a lot of pollen coming in the last yard either. I don't know. That's probably it. Maybe just maybe a pollen deficiency. That's all. Maybe they'll turn back around, but I lost one hive here. I upgraded one hive here and downgraded one hive here. So I guess I kind of went in the opposite direction where I wanted to go. But the other colonies are looking good, and everything that had marked as an A plus, except for that one weird colony that shrank with the drone pupa, is staying an A plus, and most of them honestly are like 10 plus framers. So the overall grade here is probably really good. I'm just not seeing any significant change. Okay, so this yard was not as good as I was hoping either. When I actually counted the numbers though, I think there's 28 colonies here. 24 of them are California grade, and 1 out of the 4 will probably make it. The other 3 are kind of iffy. So the queens, there's enough pollen coming in. The queens aren't shutting down, because for a minute I was like, man, maybe I ought to move this yard or the last yard to some of those yards that are bringing in so much pollen that are increasing really well, but it's not really worth it. I mean, as long as the queens aren't shutting down, and already the majority of the yards going to California, I don't see the headache of me having to move them. So I just topped up their buckets, and I hope they hold out okay during this freeze. Broke as much I could down. There's still a few triples left that have the comb and the honey and stuff, but most of them have been broken down. And nothing objectively wrong with them. I just think there's probably just not enough pollen coming in. I'm not going to have enough daylight to do a 4th yard. I really wanted to, but I've got about 30 minutes of light left, and the temperature's already starting to drop. As soon as the hives get in the shade like that, they just start getting cold, and they start getting mean too right now. So probably just going to have to call it, and I'm near about out of syrup anyway, so I'm going through more syrup than I was expecting. I think I'm still going to have enough to make everything work out. Just a lot of these hives have drank the 2 gallons, and I wasn't planning on that, for them to drink so much. The yards I was checking the other day, they were mostly full. So I don't know, totally opposite. I definitely need to temper my expectations with that second semi, because obviously you saw the first yard that was growing a lot. That's what I have been seeing the last couple of days. So that's why I was so excited. I was like, yeah, that's significant growth. And then I hit these 2 yards, which are really good yards and are mostly going to California, but have just kind of stagnated and don't look that impressive. I don't think they're going to go down. They don't seem to be any signs of them shrinking outside of that one, but I don't know. I mean, it kind of could go either way. If I keep running into yards like this that have just stagnated, then I'm in trouble. I won't have all the hives for the second load. If I hit a bunch of yards like I had the first yard today, and like what I've been seeing this week, then heck yeah, we're going to make it. So it's just like, it's like an emotional roller coaster, trying to figure out what the heck is going on. And I don't know until I get in the colonies. I'm going to get rained out tomorrow. I might be able to do a little work on Sunday. And then I think all the way to next Friday, it's going to be too cold to open the colonies. 20-degree nights, 30-degree nights, and a lot of some rain off and on. So I'm okay. I got to finish getting those pallets washed and repaired. I'm going to go ahead and try to get enough pallets ready for 2 semis. And just in case I can make that work. And, it's a good thing to have it done anyways. And I'm not sure if it's slightly warm enough and the weather's not too bad. I might just take that 500 gallons I'm going to have left and just run around. I can't open the colonies, but maybe I can at least just give the ones that have empty buckets, because there are more than I was expecting. Give them a shot, give them a gallon or something. I don't know if they'll really be able to do much with it in that cold weather, but with us getting so close to the potential shipping date, I kind of would want to make sure they've got at least a little something if they want it, or if it gets warm enough. Sometimes the sun will heat them up just enough where they can get up there and drink a little bit, or get out and fly for a second, even though it might be too cold for me to crack them in half and release all that heat out of there. So that's probably what I'm going to end up doing next week. I'm really hoping for a phone call or a text from the broker any day now, and to figure out a more detailed shipping date. I'm going to keep talking to him about what I'm seeing here. That, yeah, it looks. I still think I'm still feeling pretty good about the second load, but you know, I've got to get through more colonies before I see it. And unfortunately, it's going to be about another week where I'm just shut out of the hives. It's extremely frustrating. There's nothing you can do about it though. It's just the weather. But that's what I'm doing every day, is just going through and doing my hopefully final round of grading. And I need to start bringing them to the house here soon. I need to put Apivar in everything. I got a bunch of rotten boxes and lids I still need to change. There's still a lot of stuff to do. And you know, we'll just see. Hopefully they'll hold out. This freeze is definitely, I've been listening to the news all day, and they say it's supposed to be way worse than it was last week. But the hives don't even seem to be dented by the cold last week. So I'm not overly concerned about it. I'm just more frustrated because I'm losing a week of work when I need to be out here grading these colonies. And that's just beekeeping though. Hopefully, maybe I'll get lucky and the broker will want to push them back to February or something. I don't want to keep them here too long to where the buckets run dry and then the bees start to decrease just due to the lack of carbohydrates. That could be a problem, but I'm not worried about it this month. And probably not going to worry about it too much in February either, because you know they've got a good weight on them, I think. And if they're in that growth state, I'll still get a good brood hatch out, and hopefully they get to the almond orchards and start bringing in some nectar and pollen there, and we can just keep their growth going. But yeah, that's about it. And hopefully the freeze will be okay, and maybe I'll hit some more of those really nice yards. And I think I didn't add up everything I did today for the increase, but I don't know. It's hard to say. That first yard I had added quite a bit of colonies to it. So I don't think I've gained 100 colonies this week in the grading, but I've probably gained at least like maybe 75 to 100 colonies. I don't know. I have to dig through my notes and add everything up and see how much it increased from the last grade. But I'm inching towards that second load for sure. I just have to kind of keep inching towards it a little more. I just need some warm weather to open these hives and find out. But we'll see. We'll get there. I'm definitely glad they're at least holding their grade. That's a plus. It could have been the other way. I could have been really upset and they could have all crashed. So I'm still coming out on top. I've still got my one load. It's a great load. I just want that. I really want that second one. I'm not giving up yet. So, all right, guys. Well, I'm going to get out of here, and before it gets too cold, and chat with you guys next week. Hopefully the freeze will pass quick, and maybe the hives will be doing better. All right. See you guys. Bye.